Hey guys, what's up? Thanks for stopping by. Today we're going to go over another FreeCodeCamp basic algorithm scripting challenge. And this challenge is going to be the Mutations challenge. And so, as you can see, I already have all the code written out. I have some comments in there too if you want to read those and kind of just briefly get an explanation of what that is. I will obviously go over it too, but those comments are just for your review. And without any further ado, let's just go ahead and get right into the instructions. So, we are told to return true if the string of the first element of the array contains all of the letters of the string and the second element of the array. So, I'm not going to go through all these examples, but basically, the whole gist of the situation is we have to take the second element of the array, that string, oopsie, what am I doing? That string and see if all the letters in this string are also somewhere in the word of the first element. That probably was really confusing, but basically, are the letters in the second element somewhere in the first element? Okay, so let's see where I kind of started. I figured that since we have to check all the letters inside of the second element, that we would need to break that second element up into, individual elements as opposed to it being one whole string. We have to break those letters in that word up into individual elements. And we also have to ignore the casing of those elements. So we don't want to have this return false or true because of one of the letters being uppercase as opposed to lowercase. So with that being said, I decided to go ahead and split the original array up and create individual variables for each of those elements. As you can see with the first variable, I call it array 0. You can call it whatever you want. I just grab the first element of the array by using array syntax. So I call the array and I use the brackets. I pass in the 0th position, which in this case would be the very first element of that array. And then I just make sure that I lowercase that entire word. So this variable is equal to this value here. Everything is lowercase and it's just that string. Now I go down to the second variable here. It's a little bit different, but it's the same example. So I'm using array syntax, calling the array, using the brackets to get the element at second the second element at the first position. So it will be this, basically the second element in that array. And all I'm doing is making sure that the contents are lowercase. And instead of just leaving it at that as a string, a lowercase string, I want to make sure that I split that string up so that each letter inside of the word will be a separate element, because I have to somehow test each of those letters to see if they're in my first string. So what better way than to call the split function and put them individually as an array element? So array1 variable is equal to something like this originally. Okay, so now that I have an array and a string, I can test the elements of that array to see if they are somewhere in that string. And that would mean I have to iterate over my array to get the elements individually. And I can do that with a for loop. So I just go down to a for loop here and I set my initializer to 0 as always, and I use the condition that I want you to run as long as I is less than the length of my array that I created. So this is important, not the array that they pass in, because that would just run, 2 times every time. We want to test the elements in this array. So each of these letters can be tested against, and I have to do that by calling this array. So this for loop will run as long as this array is. So the first time around, this for loop will run 3 times. Another important thing to notice is that we don't want to use the less than or equal to condition, because if we do that, remember that I is originally starting at 0. So if we say I want you to run as long as I is less than or equal to the length of the array, it will always run 1 extra time. And that's because starting from 0 going to 3 will be 0, 1, 2, 3, and that will be running 4 times. So we don't want it to run that extra time, because then it will make it seem like we have an extra element in the array to test against, and it will make our return the wrong result. So we'll return false when we should return true, and vice versa. So just make sure that we only use the less than operator. Okay, and then every time it goes around, it's just going to go up by 1. Okay, now we can finally get into the important section of this code. Down here where we have this if condition, and we're using a function that we haven't used before, and it's called the index of function. Now let's go to the description page where I always go to look at these functions, and we can kind of see easily what this does. We have a string here that has just some long sentence in it, and we're calling the index of function on that string, and we're just passing in another string. And basically, if this index of searches the string and it does find the string welcome somewhere in it, it will return to us the position of that string. And note that the position will be a positive number. But for instance, if this searches the string and there is no welcome word in there, we're going to get returned a -1 because that's saying that there is no string inside of it that matches that. Okay, and that's perfect. We can use that to grab the element of our array, or the letter that we're currently on, and test it against our string to see if it's in there. And if it is, we'll return the positive position, and if it's not, we'll return -1, which will be equal to false. So again, we just have our string, the very first variable, which holds our lowercase string, and we'll call the index of function. And in here, we'll once again use array syntax, which will be this variable here that holds the array, and we'll just grab the element that's at the position of I. So initially, the position of I will be 0, and this would equal to the very first element in our array, which would be H. So this is hello. We're saying in the word hello, is there an element or a character that's equal to H? And obviously there is. It's the very first element in that word. So this will not return -1. Instead, it will return true. Yes, there is an H element in there. And again, this is going to run throughout the entire contents of the array. So it won't just stop at the first element, it'll go through every single element and do that same test. And if at any of those elements return false, it'll just break out of that entire for loop and this will be false. And so since at the end we know that there is no Y inside of hello, this would eventually return false, and this case would be equal to false. But another thing to take note of is that we don't want to, I know it's tempting to, when we use an if statement, to kind of put the return in the inside of it, like right here. Oopsie. Yeah, to kind of put it in the inside of that for loop. But remember that whenever we hit a return statement, we jump all the way out of our for loop. So it would only ever run the first element in the array. It would never get a chance to run the other ones because as soon as it hits that return, it's going to end the for loop for good. So the best thing to do is to just take that return all the way out and put it outside the for loop. It still works the same. Well, it obviously would do it the right way. Hopefully that makes sense. And if it doesn't, just leave a comment and I'll explain why you should return outside of the for loop. But other than that, if we were to just run this code, everything's completed. It's correct, and keep calm and code on. Perfect. So if you have any comments, again, just leave them below and I will get back to them as soon as I can. Hopefully this helped you guys in some way. I know it's a bit complex, but if you need any help, again, comment. Other than that, subscribe and have a great day.